clearing out the throat.
Yep. Glad this is getting
tonsillitis.
recorded.
I swear, it's seasonal allergies.
I was trying to do the theme music, come on.
No, a different theme
No,
music.
not that one.
It's all right. I got it.
I'm gonna try that one.
Well, all of these have some pretty impressive soundtracks. I'll have to say off the bat.
Oh my god!
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. 3, 2, 1. There are two kinds of people in this world: those who do podcasts and those who listen to them. You listen. Welcome to our latest episode of Tuesdays with Moire. I'm your host, Ian Taylor. Joining me tonight are my wonderful guests, Devin King and Stephen Beeson, as we're talking about a trio of films dealing with justice in the West for our next and last of the month fan-selected episode. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing well. This was the winner of the first ever poll-selected episode tournament.
Yay!
Was suggested to give it a round of applause. Was suggested to us by a Mr. Revy the God Pharaoh on Discord. I believe his name is Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
And thank you, Matt, for this. I'm doing well. Air conditioner got fixed. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Hey, that's good.
I had to miss a couple of weeks back, and then last week we did it without Ian, so now the gang's all here.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Much to Stephen's dismay.
Oh yeah, I was totally ready. I was like, man, Alexis is like way better. We should just get her and like kick Ian out.
Yeah, I know. Or you just give me segments on Thursday where I'm like, what grinds my gears? So just like, you know what grinds my gears? You, America, fuck you. That's when Stephen pulls me off the air.
Yeah, you would have the Thursdays.
Yeah, I have the
first take over Tuesday.
Thursdays with Ian. Make it happen.
Yeah.
That's our Patreon goal.
Yes. So this week, thanks to Matt's suggestion, we are looking at Southern Justice. There's also a bit of Western Justice in there. It's kind of a mix of the two. Next time or sometime we should look at Northern and Eastern Justice, some Canadian and some Asian revenge movies. That's my pitch for the follow-up to this one. But and
we still need to do Stephen King leftovers. I know we did Stanley Kubrick leftovers, kind of touched on that with Dr. Sleep, but I think Maximum Overdrive and some of those are worth talking
Sleepwalkers.
about. Oh yeah, Sleepwalkers.
Yes.
Definitely.
Oh, I have that on DVD actually. I'd be happy to watch that again.
God.
There's so much content.
I had an opportunity to pick up his mini series of The Shining, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't. Maybe I had better judgment then, but I didn't think I'd have the opportunity to talk about it, which totally changes the paradigm. Makes me want to seek out trashy, awful things to delineate what's so fun and amusing about them.
Yeah, well, in the mini-series, Jack doesn't have an axe when he goes in the door. It's a rubber mallet.
Yes,
because
that's so much scarier.
And that is in the original book. It's being true to the word. Also, living CG hedge animals.
90s CGI.
Oh yeah, and the moving
kind.
garden hoses, if I remember correctly.
Some things don't translate well to cinema, Steven, especially in the 90s with no money. But that's the good one. Remember that, guys. That's the good one.
Well, speaking of the good and the bad and the ugly.
Damn!
Damn! Good transition.
Thank you. Let's get started on these movies. Who would like to introduce them?
What do you guys mind if I introduce the first one?
Go ahead.
All right.
I'll introduce Django.
Sounds good. The good, the bad, the ugly. This is everybody's dad's favorite film. It's a very classic Western from the iconic duo Sergio Leone and Ennio Morricone, may he rest in peace, one of the best composers of our time, coming together for the third of the Dollars trilogy, focused on the man with no name, but this time, he's dealing with two other folks. the Ugly, otherwise known as Tuco, a bandit of sorts, a drunk, an alcoholic, but someone who's just as obsessed with finding the treasure as he happens to run into the man with no name as they form an unlikely bond, basically trying to screw each other over to get the gold first. But in the meantime, there's also a bounty hunter played by Lee Van Cleef, I think that's how you pronounce his name, that are chasing both of them and trying to beat them to the gold in the process. And it's a very simple story. A lot of Sergio Leone's stories are very simple in concept, but it's the execution of them that's so grand and awe-inspiring and beautiful and incredible to watch. I watched this movie for the first time today. I have not seen this movie before, and whew, this maybe it's recency bias, but this may be one of the greatest movies ever made. Which is amazing for me because I can't stand westerns most of the time. The genre just drives me nuts. But the way this movie subverts all of those tropes and makes some like a really compelling, not just spectacle, but really great character work and world building and an anti-war message that never felt preachy or on the nose. And it's 3 hours long, and I gotta say, this felt less draggy and boring than the other films we're talking about on the podcast, which one of them is way shorter, but that film somehow felt way longer. But I watched it this morning, and I almost wanted to throw it in a second time. If I had more time, I definitely would have watched it again, because this film is absolutely magnificent on all fronts.
I'll say this was also my first time seeing it all in one sitting. Like, I had seen the classic scenes, I'd heard it talked about. It would pop up on TV every so often, but it'd always be in the middle of things, so I never saw the setup or what's happening, so I never could get fully invested to it. This is the first time I sat down and I watched it all in one sitting, and I found it very compelling, very enthralling. Although I did find something kind of off about it, and I discovered very shortly after. I had watched the original American cut of it, which cuts out, I think, about 17 minutes total from the Italian release that they had put on. Although the DVD that I have, it has the whole Dollars trilogy on it, and it shows you what the deleted scenes were in the original Italian dub. Although more recently, they had restored the whole version of it, which I think is what you guys saw. And funnily enough, this is something that just keeps happening with these episodes. So at my place, we have satellite TV, and almost every couple weeks or so, one of the movies that we end up talking about ends up being on TV on some channel, which is I don't know. It's becoming more of a coincidence. It's seeming like less coincidence. I think someone's listening in, and not telling us, or we're just on ahead of the curve here. But I swear, like when we talked about Beetlejuice happened to be on like the day after, and the day after I watched Good and the Bad, the Ugly, it shows up on TCM, and it's a restored version, and yeah, so I was able to kind of revisit some scenes that were cut out from the original, which helped piece things a little more together. I'm not sure why they cut it out in the American version of it when it first released, probably just to save on time. But I found it a very compelling watch. It holds up really well as a cornerstone of the genre, but it is also odd how it does subvert the tropes of it at that time as well. And I might have to watch some other westerns to compare, but I can never really connect with the Wild West like too much. I did remember watching the Wild Wild West when I was a kid and enjoying that, unironically. Although these days I'd have very different views of it. But yeah, just seeing how Clint Eastwood's character was built, like the archetype of his character that he's over the years. It's very interesting to see him like playing it for real. Anytime the music cue came up, I kept thinking there was a joke somewhere because that's what I've been used to seeing in the parodies, but of it.
Well, it's only funny because it's so iconic. Like, this is one of those movies where, like Jurassic Park, like Back to the Future, if you haven't seen it, you've seen it, thanks to pop culture.
Exactly. No, but seeing it in context completely changes the meaning of that sound cue.
Exactly.
When I hear it now, like, it is actually dramatic in the film, and they put it at very good moments. I really love their use of motif. Like, Ennio Morricone is an iconic composer, and this is why. You hear him use and reuse motifs to kind of foreshadow a certain idea. Like the arpeggios that you hear in the track Ecstasy of Golds that you hear toward the end of the movie. You hear a little bit of that arpeggiation at some point in the middle of the film, and it kind of foreshadows what's going to happen later on. And it's just that use of score integrated into the narrative of the film that really elevates it to a whole new level and makes it so iconic, I think. So there's a really brilliant use of scoring there by taking these musical ideas, these motifs, and playing them in certain scenes to enforce the ideas that are happening. Although I did have one question to note here, and you guys tell me what you think. So the title of the film, Good, Bad, and Ugly, paints the three main characters as these archetypes, and they kind of enforce that characterization throughout the film. But my question is, would your views of these characters have been any different if the movie was called something else? If they didn't paint these three characters as these three different sides? Like, does that change how you watch it if you stripped it of its title and of those characters of those archetype models? Would you look at it any differently?
I think that's a good question, and I think it's interesting because I actually had the thought that the title, I mean, as iconic as it is and how much it's woven into the narrative, the title, there's part of it that like almost doesn't seem to fit in a sense, like in the way that, and this is part of what I liked about it, is that all of these characters are, none of them are really good, and none of them are really like especially bad. And I think that's a different, that's certainly a subversion of what was going on at the time, where it's like you have John Wayne, he's the good guy, you have the guy in the black hat, he's the bad guy. This was more concerned with, this is a really lawless kind of landscape, and so what defines good in that kind of world maybe isn't, great, I do think that Clint Eastwood's character was probably the closest to a noble sort of character, or the leading, good guy. Actually, he and Lee Van Cleef do not have as much screen time as Eli Wallach. If you actually count it,
they rarely have any.
Would be theoretically the lead of the movie.
Yes,
kind of funny.
I joked about that. I had that in my notes. I'm like, Eli's the hero of the movie because Ecstasy of Gold plays while he's searching for the graves, and it's a fantastic scene. But I always joke and say this is his theme because he's the real hero of the story, and he's such. Can we just talk about how great of a character Tuco was in this movie? Like, not only is he genuinely hilarious, but you also do kind of feel bad for him because he is like pushed around a lot by the main character, and the bad guy is basically left for dead by Clint Eastwood at the start of the movie. And like, despite the fact that he's kind of a slime ball, he's always like really smart and clever, and he goes through all of this effort to get to the gold at the end. Part of you is just like, yeah, you're kind of a piece of shit, but at the same time, I kind of want you to get that gold.
Yeah, I think he's a determined idiot. I mean, they do comment on like, the reason I trust you is because you're smart enough to whatever. I forget the context of the scene, but
yeah, you're smart enough to hold a gun, I think was what he was saying. But he actually comes across as pretty clever, like in the bathtub scene where he's like, all right, time to get up, and he just shoots him in the face, and he's like,
they kind of imply that he doesn't even know how to read. Like, because you remember there's that scene where Clint Eastwood is reading, and he's like, E-D. It says idiot.
Idiot.
What's that? It's for you.
It's for you. Like, but here's the thing, like, a lot of people in the West wouldn't know how to read. He wouldn't exactly have a lot of practice.
Right. And I mean, the thing about it is like Clint Eastwood and Tuco, Blondie and Tuco, they have this incredible, like, camaraderie. And I was, like, even taken back because there's that brutal sequence where Tuco is leading Blondie through the desert, and like Clint Eastwood collapses, and you can tell that they've applied this like makeup or something to make
very
it look
convincing for the time, though.
Oh yeah,
hideously burned. And it's like still at the end, there's like this kind of brotherly bond between
Yeah,
them.
because
And
they
it's
hate
just,
each other, but you can tell they do secretly like each other because he even says, like, we've got nobody else out here. Like, we have no family, no friends. Like, we have to
yeah,
rely on each other's back. I think he does realize that a little bit.
It's not that they exactly like each other; it's that they're kind of depending on each other's livelihood, and they had kind of a partnership where, he would turn himself in for his crimes, and then he would save him last minute. And I love the line where after he runs off, he says, "You ain't great after all the times I've saved your life."
Yeah, it's just such a trollish comment, but yeah, they're basically
well,
scam artists at the start of the movie.
I don't know if it's maybe, I don't know if it's that they like each other, but it's more out of what I would consider to be like mutual respect.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair, especially for the time.
Yeah, and so to kind of add to the conversation, I grew up, I was born and raised in Arkansas, which is like right next door to like Texas, and it's like the American South. And so growing up, my grandfather watched a ton of old Westerns. And he would watch Westerns with my mom, and then, when I got older and, my mom had me, that was like a bonding thing that me and my mom would watch Westerns. And so it was kind of this passed down family tradition kind of thing. So I'm pretty well versed in Westerns. This one had actually escaped me. I don't know how, but I had not seen this one yet.
Really?
And this was the first time that I saw it, and I watched it all in one sitting and just blown away. And it was,
Yeah, it's like out of the gate, like
yeah,
out of the gate, it just grabs you into the world and the sound and start going.
Oh yeah, it's just the sound design, the cinematography, the acting,
the editing.
The editing. That's another one. There's one particular moment that I noticed where Tuco draws a gun. I forget the exact context, but he draws a gun and he goes to shoot it, and it immediately cuts to this cannon going off. Like the Civil War cannon.
Oh, that's when he was shooting him while he was trying to hang him. It was like, goodbye, amigo, and immediately cuts to that cannon.
And I was like, that's incredible. Like, that is amazing. It is just flawless. The score of the soundtrack from Ennio Morricone is just, it's breathtaking.
Divine.
Yeah, really is. And actually, we'll talk about Quentin Tarantino later, but Ennio Morricone never really got the recognition I think that he deserved during his life. In fact, in 1982, I think it was, he did the soundtrack or rather the score for John Carpenter's The Thing, and he won a Razzie Award for the worst score.
Yeah, and John Carpenter won worst director, I think.
Yeah, which is absurd.
Pathetic.
But later, Quentin Tarantino hired Morricone to do the score for The Hateful Eight, and actually used some of the score that Morricone had used on The Thing, and it was the first time that Ennio Morricone won an Oscar for his work.
That's insane.
He literally won worst score and an Oscar for like the same, instrumental.
Basically, yeah. There's one different song in The Hateful Eight. That's it.
Yeah.
It's incredible, just like the context of it. I think people will still just probably couldn't digest the thing at the time, so maybe the Academy was just hesitant to give it any kind of recognition, and then give it a Razzie.
And it's also interesting to note that critical reception at the time was kind of mixed. Like, people didn't know what to make of this. Some of it was very negative.
I think a part of that is that it's so long. Like, people weren't
Well,
like, what with really long films back then, they were like these huge spectacles, like Ben-Hur or Lawrence of Arabia. And this like has its
right.
spectacle too, but it's kind of more about like these morally ambiguous, not particularly likable characters, and there's like long pacing and lots of build up and like quick payoff, and I think they just want something with a little more spectacle, and this was something that was a little bit different from that. It's
Well,
iconic now,
so
but at the time, I think people just couldn't quite get a handle on what it was
yeah,
going for.
I mean, it's like the meme, like you guys aren't ready for that, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the thing about the thing about the good, the bad, and the ugly. This was like a spaghetti western, and
Mhm.
at the time, spaghetti westerns were like looked down upon.
Yeah, because they weren't like
No,
American westerns.
no, they weren't like American westerns. They, I mean, even in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, excuse me, they reference that like, it's like you have these masculine, manly guys of the 50s that are now in the 60s, and the world's kind of changing, and over in America, it's like there's a bunch of effeminate looking hippie guys, so
Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
counterculture movement.
yeah, right.
There's
You've got the long hair
they're
and the
they're
like,
challenging the tradition,
Exactly.
right.
and
And
they're
so
they're,
you
they're
would
very
have like,
anti-war.
yeah, well, you would have guys like, Dennis Hopper when he was a teenager coming out
Hmm.
as like a Western star, but it's like, oh, he's like a long-haired hippie kid or whatever. And
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, like back in those days, it was a lot of like Timothy Chalamet looking types. And so all these like Clint Eastwood, your Burt Reynolds, your like, those guys who were during the 50s that were like still rugged and manly men, they had to go over to Italy and do these spaghetti westerns. And that's also something that, really I think should be stressed is like as good as this movie is as far as acting, um, very rarely did any of the two actors on screen at any given time
Mm,
speak the same language.
legitimately. So I'm
This is
reading
true.
trivia on that, and Eli Wallach barely spoke any Italian. Sergio Leone barely spoke any English. I think there's a lot of extras in this movie that sound Italian, which would explain something that we'll bring up later. So Eli Wallach and Sergio spoke in French. That's how they communicate in the film. They both just learned French in order to actually communicate.
Well,
And it's
Clint
crazy
Eastwood
that the
was,
film comes out as good as it does, considering that language barrier between two or
Mm.
three, like spoken words. I think that's why the film probably emphasizes the visual language because it's really about body language, the body language, and how these people communicate to each other just through looks and through the stance. I think that's why, and I think that's why it works. It emphasizes the visual language rather than what they say most of the time.
well, and that's
Absolutely.
the other thing is like a lot of this was shot in Rome, and so there were people from like Spain that spoke Spanish, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's incredible to see that like all of the English was dubbed, with the
Mhm.
exception of like I guess Clint Eastwood or
Well,
whatever,
he
but
was
it's
dubbed, but he came back to do the dubbing, so it's
right.
pretty
True.
convincing.
I think majority of the dialogue, if not all of it, was done through ADR, just for
Mhm.
practical reasons. Just because getting location sound with the cameras at the time and the equipment. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, on top of
I
the
think I
language
think
barrier.
that's the only way you can get like a good sound recording at those times. Like you would record stuff on set, but most of the time you're redubbing lines just so you have a cleaner take of the dialogue. Because if you're working with these wide landscape spaces, there's all kinds of echo and reverberation, and the boom operator can only get so close with his mic, if at all. So, yeah, they're redoing the lines in the studio, and
Mhm.
when they're doing two different languages, the lips are hardly ever going to match.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure. There's just
That yeah,
it, it-
that's why in anime they keep the mouth movements very simple so that it can be redubbed in just about any language and kind of work.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's just so much And it's one of those films with just so many great scenes. Like, no, that's the best scene. No, wait, that's the best scene. Like, the character introductions themselves are so artfully done. Like, I love with Tuco's intro, like, you see these 4 characters that are about to get into a tussle, and you think, okay, one of those are going to be the protagonists, one of those are going to be the characters I follow. But then you see this man, like, hop out of a window, holding a chicken to show that he's, like, a little bit crazy, with a gun in his hand to show that he likes to shoot, and the fact that he's hopping out of the window showing that he knows how to improvise. And you see the name written on it, you're just like, this guy's going to be one for our characters? But it just tells us everything we need to know about this guy just through the visual language alone. And Lee Van Cleef as the bad guy was like one of the best villains of all time. Like, he reminded me a little bit of Darth Vader, sorry. Like, just in the sense of his presence in every scene. Like, he always controls the room by barely doing anything. And the intro where he's like intimidating the guy and his family, and he eats bread like a psychopath. Like, don't eat the bread when it's dry, man. Dip in that soup. Fucking psychopath. Right. And we just know from that and many other reasons.
I was going to say, even just the very first shot of the film shows how visually dynamic this film was captured. It starts off as a wide landscape, and a guy just dips his face into frame, and suddenly you go from a wide shot landscape to a close-up, and the camera, if anything, has just pulled focus. But the focus on the lens is so deep that you don't even see much of a shift in the focal plane. And it just shows how, visually dynamic this film's presentation is. Like, the shot doesn't change, but the guy just swings himself into frame, and you go from a landscape to a close-up. It just shows how, and I love the use of deep focus photography in this. You don't see shallow depth of field too much, but when it is used, it's used to great effect. And we'll get into more cinematography bits, but I thought the way that they captured this, there's a reason it's so iconic. It's just so creative and poignant in its presentation to emphasize the right character moments and the mise-en-scene. I'm going to get really pretentious about that in a bit, but
please do.
Anyway, go on.
Well, and it also should be noted that Lee Van Cleef was not the first choice to play Angel Eyes. Charles Bronson was offered the roles of Tuco and Angel Eyes both.
Wow.
And
how cool would that have been?
It would have been very cool. There's actually a story there. Charles Bronson declined. He was in England filming The Dirty Dozen, and this was not the first time that Sergio Leone had approached Charles Bronson about a film, and Charles Bronson would always turn it down. He was either scheduling conflicts or something else, or he wasn't sure about the project because, again, spaghetti westerns. But they actually did team up 2 years later, I believe. So, let's see, Good, Bad, and the Ugly was 1966, and this came out in 1968, was Once Upon a Time in the West. And they teamed up Charles Bronson, Henry Fonda, Jack Robards, and Claudia Cardinal. So there is a Charles Bronson Leone team up after all. But I thought that was interesting. Lee Marvin was also approached at one point for Angel Eyes, and I mean, just a few different actors. Lee Van Cleef later joked that they only brought him back because they didn't kill him for a few dollars more.
I forgot he was in that. Yeah. I don't even remember much about the first 2 movies. The third movie just sticks out to me so much more.
Well, and I think there was some controversy because one of the movies, I believe it was Fistful of Dollars, the very first one, there was some allegation Sergio Leone had just kind of plagiarized Yojimbo.
Yes, I do remember that.
And done Yojimbo in the Wild West.
Well, it's interesting because this is kind of part of the cross-cultural conversation happening between the East and the West. You look at, Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, and you look at Great Westerns, and there's a lot of similarities between them, which are probably not accidental. I mean, I don't know if Akira Kurosawa, he would have done Seven Samurai first, and I haven't seen Yojimbo, but yeah, I mean the Magnificent Seven was created because of Seven Samurai, and
Right.
we even mean to watch and touch up on that film of continuing our Sevens trilogy, so we actually have 7 titles. But that's another one that'll be worth exploring in the future.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you mentioned before, Devin, like the detail is just in every frame of this movie, like every single frame.
Oh yeah.
Like just even the use of extras in every frame. There's never that moment where it just feels like the extra is going like, all right, this is my cue. I'm just walking on the frame. Like every scene feels so organic every time an extra is used, either from the towns or from the the Confederacy base. I think it's the Confederates. I'm not a history buff. This is for the proof of that. Or just in the war scene, like everything feels so convincing. Like every detail. And I love how grimy and dirty and gritty this movie feels as well, which is probably a big reason why it's held up so well after all these years.
Well, this is also an interesting fact. So at some point they run into the Confederate Army, or it's the North and the South, and they thought that that their people, it was their people that they were approaching, or the people that they're pretending to be. It turns out they had blue costumes with sand and dust all over them, so they looked gray. So that's how they wind up in this prison camp, or as prisoners of war. And there's this whole sequence, a massive sequence around this bridge, which they had to build for this sequence, and they actually enlisted help from the Spanish army, because this was filmed in Spain, actually, to be extras acting as these Confederate soldiers, which, that made sense, because they have the training already. They know how to, look like they fight professionally, just as they do. Although techniques between that time period and this time period would be different, they still would have the same, kind of mindset going. And that's really an insane sequence, and I'm so fascinated what the Italians were so fascinated. Like, I'm curious what makes them so curious about the whole West. Like, what about the West and the mythos of that did they gravitate to, and why were they making spaghetti westerns? I want to look more into that and discover what that is.
Yeah,
well,
it's
so
like
you brought up the bridge. Eli Wallach actually talked about that, and so after they had built the bridge, Sergio Leone had asked the Spanish army captain in charge to detonate it, because it was like out of respect and, just a sign of gratitude. So they agreed to blow up the bridge. But this kind of goes back to the language barriers on set.
Oh, yeah.
And so Leone was supposed to give the signal, which was vai, which means go. And he was supposed to do this over the walkie-talkie. Another crew member was speaking on the same channel and said vai vai, which is supposed to, which he meant it in the context of it's okay and proceed, like do what you're doing. He was talking to another crew member. They blew up the bridge prematurely.
I love that story.
Yeah, so no cameras were running at the time.
Oh no!
And they just blew up this bridge. Sergio Leone fired the crew member, but the captain of the army said that they would rebuild the bridge to blow it up under the condition that the crewman be rehired. And so Leone agreed, and all was forgiven, and the bridge was rebuilt, and they did it again. So they got to blow it up twice. Well,
They must be friends with the crew member, because I don't know why they'd be so ride and die otherwise.
I don't know, man. I just thought it was kind of a nice story.
It's an entertaining story, that's for sure. And
it
shows that it's like a different time. Like, we have much better safety measures in place now, and translators and all those techniques. They just didn't have stuff like that when filming in the 60s. So a lot of it was just, are we good? I guess so. I don't know. So a lot of this stuff, and the fact that they did blow up a bridge, like, 10 feet away from them. You can literally see like the rubble falling onto them. I don't think that was faked. I'm pretty sure those were parts of the actual bridge. So that alone is just incredibly dangerous, but also makes it so much more believable.
Well, I mean, it's like Bullet or The French Connection. It's like you want to shoot a car chase? Okay, let's go get in a car and just
or Mad Max Fury Road when like
the...
Tom Hardy is getting dragged onto the sand like inches away from it.
Yeah.
Also, the entirety of Come and See. That film has all kinds of OSHA violations that would not run today.
Yeah, they used real ammunition, basically.
They use real ammunition, shooting over the heads of child actors. They really kill a cow. The cow was dying anyway.
They shot the cinematographer. He had to be... Sorry, no, they shot the director. He had to go to the hospital for 2 weeks, and the cinematographer took over directing while he was away. It's insane, like, how much they did.
I do know... There was actually a controversy. There's an independent film that came out recently, and one of the scenes had a shot where they're hunting a deer, and so they I mean, it was a big budget independent feature, but they didn't, I don't know. They just went on a deer reserve and shot the deer legally. On camera, and then when they skinned the deer, it was just an actual deer. And it was totally legal, and they had checked with everybody, but it was kind of a big controversy about how ethical that was.
Yeah, PETA wouldn't like any of that, I'm sure.
PETA, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, PETA's
Yeah, PETA doesn't really care about animals.
Yeah, they're a joke. I mean...
It's just... they're one of those groups that, not to get too political, but just real quick, they're one of the groups that will say they want to protect something, but they just make things worse.
Cough, cough. Autism speaks. Cough, cough.
Yeah, that's anyway, a whole other can of worms. Anyways, back to Westerns.
Back to Westerns, yeah. No, but yeah, I mean, man, this movie, I mean, and I know this term gets thrown around a lot, and
Screw
sometimes
it, go for it.
A masterpiece.
Yeah.
This film is just when I watched this, it was like the feeling I had when I watched 2001 for the first time. Nice. It is a film that restores your faith in what cinema can be. And I know that's pretentious or whatever, but I mean,
that's not that bad.
It's one of the best movies I've ever seen.
I think I'm with you on this one.
It reminds you why you go to the cinemas.
Exactly. I want to see this in the cinemas, man. I so hope the Highland gets this at some point. If they got 35mm print, I would get front row seats. I don't care if we'd be in the 5th wave of COVID or whatever. I would be there.
Yeah,
front and center.
Oh man. And I just got I actually just replaced my TV. I posted this in the Discord chat.
What's a 4K TV?
It's a 55-inch. Yeah, I think it's 4K. And I was thinking man, just throw that up on there and just
envelop yourself in it. Yeah, the sound too is really, really exceptionally done. Yeah. Even though it's all ADR, the echoing that Tuco does at the end of the movie is really convincing. That sounds like a pretty convincing echo for something they likely had to dub over and probably layered on top of itself to get that effect. I don't even know how they pulled that off.
I can tell they use tape echo for those sequences. So this is actually an interesting thing. I'm a bit of a music studio nerd. And there was literally this box that you could buy called Space Echo. And in it, they would have tape. And the way that you would create a delay effect or an echo is you would have the tape running through as you're recording. And it would pick up your sound in real time and play it again. And it would get quieter and quieter. And you could adjust that in real time. And it creates this kind of tape-saturated echo effect. That was the way you did it at the time. These days, there's digital ways to do that, but even now, they try to emulate the sound of the tape because there'd be this natural kind of decay or worsening of the sound as it delays, which has an interesting kind of sound effect, and it makes it sound more like a real space. As the echo goes, it gets more distant and falls apart. So I can hear the tape saturation in the even some of the effects that they do, where you hear this kind of repeated sound that starts to feedback, it's that kind of space echo, tape echo sound. They might have had a different kind of box then, but it's that same kind of technology using tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
what
and
really...
actually...
Sorry, go on, Stephen.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to interrupt. But actually, I thought it was funny because I think it was either... I think it was this film that Clint Eastwood walked away from, and he was like, I mean, after it was all filmed, it was all said and done, even Clint Eastwood was was like, I don't know about this one. This one's just like whatever, it's kind of bad. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be proud of this one. And so he had a party for a bunch of his friends
Rip off the
at
Band-Aid.
his house. Yeah, he was just like, hey, I'm having a party. Like, I'm going to be in this movie that I shot over in Spain. It's an Italian director. I don't know if it's any good, but you guys tell me, like, what you think of it. And so all he had was basically, it was like a rough cut, like a first draft of the final cut. And none of the dubbing had been like even really completed. It was just like everybody was speaking in a different language.
Everybody was speaking Italian.
Oh, yeah.
Or French.
Yeah, or Spanish or French or whatever. And so he puts it on, and they said even though they didn't understand the language, it was like they still, like, you could turn the volume down and like not even listen at all and still be captured in the story, because it just, like, the visuals alone, told the story. And it was such a high compliment that everyone gave at this party that, like, Clint Eastwood was like, okay, maybe this is
maybe this is good now. Now that people
good.
said
maybe
it good.
I was wrong.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's a good reminder. I love stories like that because it shows how people, when they're creating something, they don't know if it's going to be good or not. And sometimes the projects you have the most doubts in turn out just through all kinds of different factors that are hard to really calculate. It turns out being one of the most iconic works just because it's so out there. It's so different than anything else. You don't know how it's going to hit people. Like, is this in line with what people expect? Is this does this make sense to other people? Like, I don't know. And that's, and you hear stories of how George Lucas went with Steven Spielberg to Hawaii after Star Wars, or when Star Wars premiered, because he thought it was going to tank. And he just said, fuck it, I'm going to go on vacation and forget all about this. And then he comes back, and he's a worldwide success now. And then we get George Lucas today.
Yeah, did you actually hear the bet that they made?
No, what was that?
Okay, so I guess it was right before like even started filming, but at the time George Lucas was so unsure of himself about Star Wars: A New Hope. I want to make sure I tell this story right, because it's an incredible story, and of course, like, Spielberg was doing what was that, the oh god, the Simon Says robot. Oh, help me.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to think. Close Encounters?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, forgot about that guy.
So they were just about to do, like, those movies. Spielberg was going to do Close Encounters of the Third Kind. George Lucas was going to do Star Wars. And they had both gone to film school together, and they just, they weren't sure about their next project. So George Lucas, this is from Spielberg, he said, oh my God, your movie is going to be so much more successful than Star Wars. This is going to be the biggest hit of all time. I can't believe this set. I can't believe what you're getting. And Spielberg told him, all right, I'll tell you what, I'll trade some points with you. He said, I'll give you, so this is George Lucas to Spielberg. They made this bet that Spielberg would get 2.5% of the profits from Star Wars if Lucas got 2.5% of the profits from Close Encounters. So they agreed to do this, and Spielberg got $40 million off of Lucas' movie. compared to, I mean, Lucas did pretty good, but it was just funny that, neither one of them were really sure about their own work.
Yeah.
And they were just gambling about it. Like, I don't know about this one. And it turned out that Star Wars was like
insanely successful. But Close Encounters was pretty successful too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
nowhere near as successful, but still made tons of money in the box office.
It's still a classic in many ways. And what's funny is when they were in Hawaii, steeped in their doubts about these things doing well at all, they were thinking what they could do next. And one of the ideas they had was Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you just need somebody else to reassure you about the work you've made. Like, I've had plenty of projects where I just, like, I can't even look at it. Like, I'm just so somehow ashamed of what I made, even though I haven't looked over it. And I'm just like, I need someone else to look at this. I need someone else to read it. It's just a very human response to creating something. And I find that the most special projects come from the places you least expect it. You just need someone to look into it for you.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't believe anyone would, doubt this film. Like, this is just such, like, an incredible, just, like, it's not just a film, it's art,
Absolutely. It's not dated in the slightest. And even stuff I would normally hate in these movies, like, some people joke about the 5 billion close-ups at the end of the movie when they're all staring each other down before the final showdown. But, they earned it. Like, they earned that build-up. They earned that payoff. We spend a whole journey with these characters, and I'm genuinely interested and excited to see what happens. And it shows that...
the whole time.
Exactly. Like, scenes like that taken out of context are incredibly silly, but with context, they're turned into something special. If you want to do a scene like that, you have to earn the audience, and it completely just wins you over at that point. And I was just on my toes wondering, I knew the Man with No Name would get okay, but I was generally interested, like, what would happen to Tuco, and what would happen to the bad guy, and it's just very exciting to watch. The pacing and build up and payoff in every scene, from the bridge exploding to the opening with Clint Eastwood getting hanged and running around the desert. It's just this perfect example, almost like a Hitchcockian example of building tension and making a pitch perfect payoff to every scene.
Well, and that was the other thing, is like, this was, I think the cut that I watched was the extended American
that's the only cut I've seen.
The restored version,
Yeah,
so this was like 3 hours, right around 2 hours and 59, 2 hours and 58 minutes, somewhere in there.
I think mine was like 2 hours and 46 minutes or something.
Oh, no. Mine was, no, I watched the extended edition. But the thing that I noticed was, like, even at 3 hours, it wasn't, like, I never felt it drag. I was never bored.
No.
I was never like, oh, I need to go do something else. In fact, I wish that, like, I would have watched another 3 hours.
I just want to have dinner with all these characters. Like, they're so interesting to me, and there's so much stuff they imply with each character. Like, Lee Van Cleef's, like, weird code where he has to live up to the job no matter what, even if it means, like, killing the original guy who gave him the job. Or Clint Eastwood clearly has a past with the Confederate soldiers. I have a theory, and hear me out here. I have a theory that he used to be a soldier, and he was a runaway. And that's why he showed so much respect to the soldiers, much more than Tuco did.
Well, here's another thing.
But all that's implied.
You could almost tie it in with the plot of The Bejeweled.
Oh. I haven't seen it.
Okay, now we're creating the Clint Eastwood cinematic universe.
Exactly.
No.
By the way, Clint Eastwood has another movie coming out this year. He is like 91, and he is still writing, directing, producing, and starring.
I know.
You gotta hand it to him that he is just a workhorse with filmmaking.
Yeah. Like, say what you want about the quality of his new movies.
His transition going from acting to directing has been phenomenal. I think his directed films are great for the most part. Really, even I saw The Mule, and he plays a really old guy in that. Well, I mean that's what he is, but I thought he was quite.
Yeah, well, I watched $1 Million Baby is like one of the best Oscar winners of all time. I mean, also Unforgiven, which is another Western.
I need to finish that. I haven't seen the full movie yet.
We should talk about that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that and Outlaw Josie Wales.
Sully was pretty good too, actually. Like, say what you want about the quality of his recent work, but the fact that the man is still like putting himself out there and just chasing after his passion is just incredibly admirable.
Yeah, like being the lead star of your own movie in your 90s. Like, I wish I was that cool going.
Yeah,
like, I think it's what keeps you going. It's he still has this energy to just strive and make something, and it makes me think of Johnny Cash in his later days. He just worked and worked, and he said, because if I put a guitar down, then I just I'll just keel over and die, basically. So he kept trying to be active and involved in his music, and that's when he came out with his cover for Nine Inch Nails' "Hurt," which, if you haven't heard that song, his take on that song, it's phenomenal. At some point, and I may have brought this up before, I want to talk about music video directors, because there's so many interesting outings from different people. It wouldn't just be like 3 separate videos, but I'd look at 3 different directors in one episode. That's an idea that I had.
Ooh, that'd be pretty cool.
There's a lot of directors who started out as music video guys. There's one, I think, 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams.
I think Mark Romanek is his name. I was just thinking about him because he's the one that directed the music video for Johnny Cash's "Hurt," and the things that they did to create that. Just watch it. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it really has this emotional impact, and the way they went about creating of it it just felt just right.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're getting a bit off topic here, but I do love the idea that like Johnny Cash, even in his later years of life, was like listening to Nine Inch Nails. That's so crazy that it really says a lot.
It's like Stanley Kubrick listening to Ministry. Like, he actually wanted Ministry and AI. Like, it's so like, bizarre.
It's like David Lynch listening to Cigarettes After Sex and all these other
and
groups.
I like it. Yeah.
I like it
he
when
also listens to Kanye.
That's the other thing too, right? Like he listens to Kanye. Although
he's talking about, I am thinking about a song called "Blood on the Leaves" today.
Age is just a number, man. Like, it really doesn't hold back your interests. But sorry, go on.
I think so many people when they get older, and I hope that I can stay on top of things and keep looking for new things in the world to take interest in. Because so many people kind of just get roped up in the past and they get nostalgic. I mean, we have almost kind of superseded or like what's the word? We've almost streamlined the nostalgia thing where people are nostalgic about things from 5 years ago. But I'm hoping that I don't regress to nostalgia when I'm in my 40s and 50s. I hope that I look back and admire certain things, but I'm still looking at new things and trying to connect with them. I want to stay on top of what the new kids are up to.
Only time will tell. Back to the movie. I don't know. Did you guys have any problems with it? I got one very minor complaint, but I want to know if you guys had any issues.
Well, the version that I watched had certain cuts in it, which I noticed, and they felt really out of place. Some of these cuts, like there's a scene, where it's concerning Tuco. These are the 2 main ones that I noticed. There's probably be more if I look more into it. But Tuco, when he shows up to ambush Blondie again, he has these 2 other padres with him, like a posse, and you would have seen that they rope into the cave and meet up with him. I did not see that scene. That scene was just cut right out in my version of the movie that I watched. And it's just like, where do these 2 other people come from?
Yeah, they literally just show up.
it's like they literally just show up in the one shot where you see them off the edges of the screen, and it's like, where do these people come from? And where, like, it's just these nonsensical omissions. Like the DVD that I had, it's part of the trilogy set, and it's just like a DVD that I got at Walmart, and I just pop it in and the movie just starts playing. And so and that's the version that I saw. And it wasn't until after that they said, hey, look at these deleted scenes, these were in the original Italian version and they haven't been redubbed. and this is where we're showing them for the first time. And so I got to see how that scene played in. There was one scene showing that Mr. Bad, that character, I keep forgetting his name, but you know the whole, yeah, that guy. So there's a scene,
Mr.
like
Bad.
there's a character moment of him of just walking into a cave and meeting up with this one guy, and there's a sound cue, and it's just like, okay, I didn't see much of this character in the version that I saw, and this just felt like a character moment where it felt like the three perspectives were more balanced, and I don't know why they omitted that in the original American versions of it. It just didn't make sense to me. I guess they were just trying to cut what they could to make it under 3 hours. I have no idea what the main reason was.
So there is an answer for that. Hold on just a second. I had this pulled up because I actually looked it up while we were talking.
Yeah.
So
lay it on us.
Hold on. Well, hold on. So the trivia section. There were. Okay, hold on. Of course.
Hold on. Go on.
There's another one where they're beating up Tuco, and there's the band playing outside, where it just cuts to kind of black randomly, and then cuts to them outside. That felt like a very obvious workaround. I don't know what I missed in that scene.
What? They cut. Wow. Yeah, that definitely screams of we gotta cut this down under 3 hours, and we got like a week to do it. That sounds rough.
It's like it cuts to black, and then it fades the music back in, and it goes to outside. It's like, okay, they're clearly cutting around something. That didn't feel like an intentional cut.
Did you see the scene where the villain was beating on Tuco?
Yeah, so it's part of that sequence, and I did see it, but there was the transition of going from inside to seeing the band playing outside while it's happening. It was just a very obvious.
I know.
So
it's probably held back on some of the violence. Okay, sorry, go
on. I'm looking up this now. Some scenes that were deleted featured Angel Eyes, Lee Van Cleef, and I think that they were omitted. I'm not exactly sure why, but they were
obviously you wouldn't sympathize with this character. That's my guess.
Well, they were only recently added, I guess, because they had to bring in another actor to do the dubbing for Angel Eyes, because Lee Van Cleef had died in 1989.
What?
Wow.
So yeah,
it's hard to wake him up now.
Well, yeah.
Just use CGI. That's all you need.
Oh yeah, let's do the Star Wars method.
Yeah, let's bring back let's bring back. Who did Disney want to bring back at one point? I forget.
Cushing in Rogue One.
Oh, not Peter Cushing, but there's another actor they wanted to bring back. He was in Rebel Without a Cause, I think. The main actor in that.
James Dean.
James Dean. They wanted to bring him back.
People got super mad about that.
Gee, I wonder why.
So, yeah.
And not only that, but in a movie that he's in, this was something else that advertisers want to posthumously or after the fact add advertisements into the background of old movies. Have you heard about this?
Yes.
Like that is such. And the minute I heard about that, I just thought of the scene in Jurassic Park taking the dinosaur and just plastering him full of fucking ads, and just how much of a monstrosity that would be.
Yeah, he's just got Rage the Legend 27 plastered all over his sides.
He's wearing Jordans. He's got Coca-Cola painted on his side. His head is no longer there. It's a rotating, floating, trifold billboard.
His body is the Michelin Man.
And it's got the same music playing, except it's the shitty flute version of it. You know, just to
awesome.
Make a mockery of that idea.
I do think we should give a rating here.
Yeah. Did you have any problems with it, Stephen?
Let's rein it in a little bit.
Stuff I want to mention real quick. You posted this in the chat. To go, like, he's generally hilarious in the movie. And I love when he shoots the guy in the bathtub. He's like, if you have to shoot, don't talk. I'm like, they're making fun of this trope in the 60s, and movies in the 2020s are still doing this. I saw Shang-Chi, and no joke, I'm not gonna spoil it, but they unironically do that trope. This movie in the 60s made fun of that stupid trope in action movies where people just keep talking.
That was Eli Wallach that improvised that line.
Nah, that's perfect.
And you know what? I think his character does the exact same thing early on. Like when he's making Clint Eastwood put the noose around himself and he hesitates before he shoots him, and then a cannon shoots out the floor and then he's gone. I think it was the actor probably making fun of that trope in the scene. If now they say he improvised it, he's like, well, it didn't make sense to me that my character did that before. Maybe when the opportunity comes up again, he'll just he'll make a point of he'll make a point of just shooting it.
He'll have learned his lesson.
Nice, that's his character
go.
arc. See, Tuco is the main character of the movie, confirmed. I think the only issue I could possibly muster up for this movie is some of the ADR's pretty hilarious, but again, that's very much a product of its time, and given the locations they had to shoot in, and given the fact that barely anybody spoke the same language, it's understandable that so much had to be ADR'd and probably not particularly ADR'd well. There wasn't much.
It's the nature of redubbing in another language.
Exactly,
also.
Exactly.
Even today, it's hard to avoid that unless you animate it and you make the mouth movements vague like they do in Japan, so it can more easily be dubbed in other languages.
And even then, it's far from perfect, but that's it.
Exactly.
That's literally the only issue I have with this movie. It's just perfect on every front. The characters are really interesting and morally ambiguous, which I certainly did not expect. Everything from the cinematography, the editing, the music, the sound design, the pacing. It's a 3-hour film that is never boring to me. It's held up exceptionally well. You know what? I feel comfortable giving this my fourth, 10 out of 10 on this channel.
Wow.
It's probably the best film we've talked about so far, honestly. Like, I just could not believe how good this film was. So the other 10s were Tammy and the T-Rex, because best movie, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and Greener Grass. So
you've only given 10s to meme movies.
I've only given it. I mean, I genuinely love Greener Grass and Dark Place. Tammy and the T-Rex. That's a meme review. 100%.
Tammy and the T-Rex and this are the two I 100% agree with you on.
Yes.
I wouldn't call it the best movie of all time. I'm giving it a 9.6. It's really up there. It's just a solid film. Really, the only nitpicks are the version I saw had some omitted scenes that didn't make sense to me, but maybe in the context of the time it makes more sense to omit those, but I'm glad that those have been restored. I don't know, they miss focus on a couple close-ups, but that's just
that's a part of this time thing too, probably.
The focus puller can only do so much, and for the most part he nails it. It's so hard being a focus puller. They really get the most flack because their job is the most critical. If you miss the focus on a close-up of a character, it's very noticeable. But major Hollywood movies, they have shots where that's literally the best take that they have, and they just miss focus ever so slightly, and you just got to use it because you didn't get another take where it was. I mean, it's very hard to do that. The job is very it gets too much flack for how critical it is, I think.
Absolutely.
But
I'm gonna give this a 10 out of 10.
What? Wait a minute. Am I hearing this right? Did we finally agree on a movie, Stephen?
Yes, I'm sure we'll disagree on these last two, but for right now, let's just save.
Let's savor the moment.
Yeah.
I'm only knocking 0.4 off because this is the version that I saw.
Well, what would you give the extended cut?
Oh, I'd give it a 10.
Nice.
So we'll just give it 10s all around.
Yay!
Round me up. Perfect movie. It's all downhill from here.
Time for Machete?
Yes. I guess I have to introduce this one, don't I?
Please do. Spoilers for Machete.
Machete is the 2010 film from Robert Rodriguez that was originally, if I recall correctly, it was originally pitched as a fake movie, a fake trailer for their Grindhouse double feature that Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez did. Those two films being Planet Terror and Death Proof. And as part of the original theatrical exhibition of those films as a double feature, they produced a bunch of trailers for fake movies of the same kind of Grindhouse style. One of which was Machete, which eventually became realized as this film. I don't know if he was planning it from the get-go, but I noticed the shot of him you see in the trailer. It's iconic of him riding up a motorcycle with a minigun hoisted up front, but with an explosion behind him. That's part of the trailer, and more or less the exact same shot is in the final film. And then another one that I'd love to talk about in the future that they did a fake trailer for was Hobo with a Shotgun, which a Canadian filmmaker took the helm of directing and realizing into a full film, and bringing Rutger Hauer on board to make that project. And that's a blast of a movie. I highly recommend it. But
So
Machete.
Also,
Go ahead.
No. One of the other films, fake trailers, I think, there was one for a Fu Manchu reboot with Nicolas Cage. Eli Roth did a Thanksgiving, I think.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
There was also, Rob Zombie's Werewolf Women of like Nazi Germany or something.
You see, why couldn't that be a real movie?
I wish that was a real movie. Go ahead, Devin. I'm sorry.
But actually, now that you mention it, reminds me. There's another short film that the guy that made Hope with a Shotgun did, and I think it was the short film that probably gave him that probably put him on Robert Rodriguez's radar to take up that project. And it's this little short film called Tree Venge. It's where a bunch of have you seen this one?
I have not.
It's on my list
so
now.
Good. I'm not going to spoil anything. Just watch Tree Venge. It's so good.
Yeah, I'll go in blind.
But anyway, off of the back of the DVD cover, I'm going to read this. So, Machete, an action-packed, bare-knuckle fistful of carnage. Asada, set up, double-cross, and left for dead. Machete, played by Danny Trejo, is an ass-kicking federale vigilante. Who lays waste to anything that gets in his path. As he takes on hitmen, vigilantes, and ruthless drug cartel, bullets fly, blades clash, and the body count rises. Any way you slice it, vengeance has a new name: Machete. Anyway, so the film opens up with Danny. Yeah, the film opens up with Danny Trejo, and they're gonna go save this girl that was kidnapped and drugged, but and she refuses to get dressed for some reason because we need our quota for TNA on display, which I don't mind. Although other people in the house certainly did. But I'm watching, and I told them this isn't gonna be your type of movie. I'm watching this, because I've got to review it, but it's also fun for me. But anyway, he picks her up, and it turns out she was on the kidnapper side. Steven Seagal, who has a fun little role in this movie. It was fun seeing him in this. She pulls out a cell phone from out of her vagina, I think, at some point.
Yep.
Yes.
And there's just other ridiculous little gags like that. I don't imagine she did it for real. I might be asking a bit much, but
just really committed to the role.
I mean, you don't see it. You just see it from behind. But it's just quite a absurd opening sequence that'll either turn people on or turn people off of this film right away. And it lets you know exactly what type of movie it's going to be from the get-go. I wasn't expecting the story to be so, to be so interesting either. I was expecting it to be just kind of one absurd vignette after another. And in a sense there is, but there's enough of a thread, a through line to this film to kind of hold it together. But it is kind of an unofficial extension of the Grindhouse thing. And this was my first time seeing it. And I had a good time. It wasn't the best film of ever. I'd still say that A Planet Terror was a more enthralling experience personally. Okay. But Danny Trejo, he lives and breathes this part, and yeah, this is a good role for him, I'd say.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was funny because Steven Seagal. I had to laugh every time he's on.
Yeah,
screen.
I had to pause the movie because I was laughing so hard when I saw him. I was like, Steven Seagal's in this fucking movie? Oh god, he looks so chubby. He's not wearing his kimono though. I'll give him that. Yeah. He does wear his kimono like he does in every other movie.
Steven Seagal, I mean, for the people at home who may not know, Steven Seagal was one of those guys who, like, back in the 80s and 90s, they really wanted him to be the next
Bruce Willis
or Arnold Schwarzenegger or even Chuck Norris. Like, it sounds crazy now, but it's like back then you didn't go to see Captain America. Like, you weren't going to the franchise. You weren't going for the character. You went to go see the actor. Like, it was like, oh, I want to go see the new Bruce Willis movie. Like, it didn't matter what Bruce Willis was doing. And in fact, most of those movies, the plot was, it's like, oh, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he's hunting demons. Or it's like, oh, it's Die Hard, but it's on, a train or whatever. And it was very much like, and it's got, whoever, right? Like,
yeah.
And Seagal did like 2 movies, I think, that were really, really big at the time. Above the Law with Pam Grier, and a couple of other, like I think
Under
there was
Siege,
one more.
I think was
Under
the other one.
Siege was one of them, yeah. But the problem with Steven Seagal was he never got a Die Hard. He never got a Rambo. Like, he never
and
had
his ego
a
went up quick. He became very self-indulgent very fast.
Well, and by the way, I mean, at the time he did Above the Law, he was already like 35. So he wasn't exactly a spring chicken, and because he never got a big franchise, he kind of just became this
laughingstock,
human meme.
Yeah, like, there's a movie he did where he's working for an oil company, and it's got Michael Caine and Arlie Ermey in it, and it's the most self-indulgent, I am amazing, I am this godlike badass that can, like, beat racism into people, and I have the bad guy talking about how amazing I am. Like, give me a break. And it only got worse from there.
I miss that, but there's a couple of movies that he's done now that have been produced in, like, China, and like places that you wouldn't even like.
Yeah, and he doesn't do anything in them. He just sits on a table.
Okay, so so there's one that they did called Sniper Special Ops, and it's like he's the most amazing trained sniper in the world, and it's just him.
He's just
sitting
this
in
chubby
a chair.
guy with a kimono. He's still wearing his kimono.
Like, he sits at this sniper rifle.
That's what he does in this movie too. But at least he has a sword,
Yeah, he doesn't even take off his sunglasses when he handles the sniper rifle.
Yeah, he doesn't even close one eye when he's handling the sniper rifle. Good stuff.
I love that this movie got a little bit fun with its cast, because, like, you have him, you have Lindsay Lohan in this kind of weird role.
Erotic role. Yeah.
And then you have actually, some decent actors with, like, Danny Trejo, Michelle Rodriguez, Robert De Niro. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, playing Donald Trump.
Before Donald Trump, too. Like,
yeah, I can't help it.
Before.
Yeah, because I can't help it. I don't do politics a lot on this channel, but I gotta make an exception. He is straight up Donald Trump in this movie. He's very racist politician that's talking about building a wall to keep Mexicans away from the border. Like, it is just... This movie is clairvoyant as fuck, man. And
Chief Marin is hysterical as the priest.
He was pretty funny, but he was also in it for 5 minutes.
That was the thing that I noticed, is like, and I think this is true with almost all of Rodriguez's projects, is like, I get the sense that he's having fun, and I feel like everybody on set had a good time. And that's one thing that I really like about Rodriguez, and I admire about him. It's like, he was just a guy in Texas with like $7,000 who made his own feature and got catapulted to fame. And it's like, even Planet Terror, like, he was doing his own little independent thing in Texas, and he cast Rose McGowan because she was basically like blacklisted because of the Weinstein scandal and all of the abuse that Weinstein was giving Rose McGowan and all of the women. And so it was like, well, just come and do my movie, like,
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think there's something there that, he just seems like a wholesome guy,
Yeah, that's true. Like, he's hard to be mad at, and even when he's making films for Weinstein's kids, aka Spy Kids, that's literally why this series exists. Like, you can tell, like, at least he's having a good time making them, and you can't say that about too many modern directors.
Was for his children.
It was also for Weinstein's kids. I think was a big part of that behind-the-scenes story.
Here's the thing, like, and this is kind of the interesting thing, is like, as bad as Spy Kids is, it's like,
first Spy Kids is okay. The first one's alright.
Okay. I mean,
I loved it as a kid.
But
the first half was good.
but it's also kind of neat that it's like you have this amazing A-list talent, just like
for a kids movie,
yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the thing that I like about Rodriguez.
So speaking of Spy Kids, sorry, real quick. So Danny Trejo is in the Spy Kids movies, and guess what his name is in Spy Kids?
Machete.
Machete. So my headcanon is that this movie is the great origin story for Danny Trejo in Spy Kids. And Spy Kids movies, he's just reliving the PTSD. Oh, that's been confirmed.
Of course,
connected. This is a cinematic universe.
Yes, I'm so happy.
It's not an accident.
It's a good movie now.
I'm sure. It's like I like that they're all interconnected. I mean, I don't like all of Rodriguez's stuff, but it feels like wholesome family entertainment. But for your uncle who's really into some edgy, violent stuff, that's a little concerning. Mm-hmm. But he's part of the family,
Yeah, that's a fair point.
No, and it never takes itself seriously. In fact, I mean, there's some moments where it takes itself a little bit seriously when it gets into the immigration kind of stuff. But I didn't mind it because I was 30 minutes in, less than 20 minutes in, and I was like, what kind of movie is this? Just trying to figure it out. And then there's a moment where Danny Trejo cuts open a man's stomach.
This is the best scene! This is the best scene!
Window on the guy and I was like, oh, I get it now.
See, the movie was... No, what's even better is that beforehand, they send in the table, and then they cut away, and then he comes under the table, even though he clearly couldn't fit under the table.
Oh,
and the whole time I was thinking, if the movie was more like the hospital scene, and the scene where he beats a guy with a weed whacker, I would have loved it so much more. Because
it's so good.
Man.
Yeah.
But I mean, God, I had a blast with it. It was way better than I expected.
I can't say I agree, unfortunately. It had its moments of dumb fun, but to be honest, I found a lot of it really boring, which is really disappointing for me. It felt really confused. I don't know if it wants to be moments like the hospital scene or Black Dynamite where it's purposely bad and over the top, but it feels like there's a constant struggle in this film where I don't know if it's purposely bad or if it's just bad, and a lot of it was just kind of cringy and embarrassing to watch. It had moments of dumb fun, but I don't know, something about this movie was just holding it back for me.
I think it's a lot better than many of the films that it's sending up, many of its style. I think it's a total send-up of the Grindhouse style. It lives in that world, but the political commentary surprisingly holds up pretty well, or at least in terms of the Trump administration. You wouldn't expect that to be a relevant part of it, but it is an ongoing, thing that Mexican people are dealing with, having these
and
really...
it's also, I mean, it's touching on these political themes, but it's doing it in this kind of fun...
But that's another thing, too.
Sort of way?
Is that element of it a reference to blaxploitation films and how blunt and unsubtle they are with their messages, or is the film just being preachy? I don't really know.
I don't think it was being preachy.
I think it's just that's just a reality for them, and they're just doing this, and they're just presenting it in this fun grindhousey kind of way, so that it makes the topic more accessible. It makes it's okay, this is a harsh reality for us, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun with it. We can't make fun of it, and have Robert De Niro play a corrupt politician, and show the ugly side of that kind of personality. I think it's
right, and
it's having fun with the real issue. It's having fun with it.
Yeah, and I think that even people who are maybe more conservative in nature, shall I say, about issues of immigration, could still have fun with this.
I totally get that. I do, but I think
it's handling this theme in a lighthearted, fun way, which is so much better than the current status of
No, but a lot of it wasn't fun for me.
Directly into the camera.
But that's what they do in this movie. They do that several. There were several points where they just shoved the throat of the message down the audience's throat. I was like, I don't know if this is a homage or not to blaxploitation culture. It felt very confused.
Ian, Okay, I like you. You're wrong. It's okay that you're wrong.
It's okay that you're wrong. And I just want to bring up real quick the thing you said about the casting. Danny Trejo, okay, he's perfect for this movie. He's genuinely hilarious to watch. Yeah, he is made for this role.
For this movie, he is Machete.
100% he is Machete. I thought a lot of the cast was wasted, to be honest, unfortunately. Like, Jessica Alba and Michelle Rodriguez look like they just didn't want to be there. Like, come on. If I want this, like, fun homage to blaxploitation films or films of that era, I want the actors to look like they're having some fun. And most of them just look like they just didn't want to be there.
Exactly what I said to begin with, is that everybody looked like they were having a good time.
I disagree with that. I don't think so. Like, it looked like a lot of them.
I'll tell you what, you call them and ask them.
Yeah, that's they can change their minds though.
Ian, I want you to ask Michelle Rodriguez, who also helped edit the film, if she had a fun time on this.
Oh yeah, I forgot she was the editor behind this movie.
She co-edited with Robert Rodriguez, so I think she was a little more invested in project than just being on screen.
Yeah, I'm glad. Look, I'm glad they had fun with it. Of course, I'm glad they had fun with it, and that's why, like you said, it is better than a lot of its contemporaries and people that try to rip it off. But it's just, I don't know if I was just expecting something different, which is totally possible. But a lot of the film didn't do it for me. Like, the action scenes, I think, are the best parts of the movie. But I think like the filmmaking of it was like really disappointing in particular, because I was like, okay, this is the time to have fun. Like, give me some really shitty like film stock effects and bad editing and zoom ins and like really mimic the grindhouse style. And the film didn't really, it did that sometimes, but it didn't really do it all the time. It kind of reminded me.
It did it in the beginning.
It did in the beginning, but it didn't for the rest of the movie. And it kind of reminds me of how, like, obviously not as bad, let me preface this, like how student films try to like mimic like old movies, like, oh, I'm shooting on digital and, you know, use like all of the digital filmmaking techniques, but I'll put like that color grading filter you get off of the Facebook channels that show like, make your film look like Joker, and add these film scratch effects for like certain scenes, like putting in the minimal effort to recreate the look, and it was really disappointing.
Here's the funny thing. I think arguably Robert Rodriguez kind of popularized this method of filmmaking. Like, people have, as long as digital cameras have been around, they've been trying to imitate what more expensive film cameras do. Like, there are movies shot right on VHS that they'll add film grain onto to make it look like an old grindhouse movie instead. And this is something that I've done, that I've talked extensively in our last episode, talking with Alexis about how you add, like, you overlay film grain assets on top of digital footage to make it look like it's in that film. And honestly, where I got that from, where I noticed these film imperfections, was from Planet Terror, because it made the scratches so apparent. That's when I started. That's really where I noticed. That's where I got the idea to start doing some more things. And I think it was the late 2000s era where that became more of a popular approach, to shoot something digitally, because that's the most convenient camera you have access to, and then add film grain to it to make it look like a grindhouse. I would say that the effect maybe isn't so integrated in this. It looks like digital high quality footage with a film grain effect over top. It doesn't look integrated into it. And at that point, you wonder why not just shoot on film. But Rodriguez was mostly converted to digital at that point. He liked the format, and it's just a different way of working, right? And it's about the crew you work with.
I guess
and
so.
For Rodriguez, shooting stuff digitally, he had his own little studio, and he could pick up his cameras anytime. He didn't have to send it to a lab, so that method of working fit his, it worked for him. So he just leaned into that, and he was able to helm the projects mostly himself. Which, that's kind of a dream, isn't it? Have your own studio.
Yeah, but I mean, none of the stuff that we're talking about, honestly, took away from my experience. Like, to be quite honest, I went into it expecting a dumb, cheesy, grindhouse movie.
Me too.
And that's what I got. And so I had fun with it, you know. And I'm a fan of these grindhouse exploitation kind of films. And man, as far as those go, this was great. You know, we talked about CGI and the ethics of CGI, and you know, bringing people back from the dead. Did any of you guys realize that Jessica Alba's
her body was CGI?
Scene,
yes, because she signed a contract that she doesn't do nudity in movies.
I had no idea.
Why didn't
That's
they
crazy.
just cast someone
Is
else
this
who can act? But
she was in her like bra and panties, and they just digitally removed her clothes.
I wasn't really paying attention because I was watching with my mom and didn't want to look like I was just
Oh,
talking to see.
yeah.
Hey, I mean, Devin watched it with his family. I watch it with mine. We're evened out. We're square.
Well,
Maybe that hampered my enjoyment a lot. I don't know.
Probably the additional commentary probably takes you out of it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. That's fair.
It makes you question the male fantasy a little bit and make you feel a little bit of guilt. So you just on the movie.
And speaking of CGI, they use CGI in this movie. I'm like, no. If you're gonna do homage to Grindhouse, give us shitty blood jibs and practical effects. And we got that sometimes, but other times it's like, all right, we go from real explosions to shitty CGI fire. I don't want CGI fire in my exploitation homage.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, Ian. What was practical then isn't necessarily so practical now.
There's a scene where they blow up a building for real, and then they blow up a building with CGI. It's like you couldn't just use the same technique to blow up the building for real again.
But wait a minute.
Here's the thing. That's so much extra money to set up explosions, to hire pyrotechnics for the day, and also to reset squibs, to have people to set up squibs and time it for whenever Machete slashes at them. It's you just think about it this way. It's a practical consideration. Do I have time, or do I just want to shoot the sequence and add the blood and explosion later, and it'll look half decent? If they're leaning into the cheesy factor anyway, they can make it work. And if the camera, like the last fight sequence, the camera's kind of shaking around and Machete's hacking and slashing all these people, and if their heads aren't popping off, if I don't have limbs coming off in this scene, why do I need to set up a fake squib to go off and try to time that and try to coordinate the timing correctly when I could just have them acted out and then I add CG blood after the fact? Like early on, there are shots of him with the machete and he's hacking off people's heads, and that is a practical effect, and that is a set thing that they do for that scene. But if he's just hacking and slashing a bunch of people, you don't have time to reset all that. So it just makes sense to add a digital asset of blood later.
I guess that makes
sense. But it's all about how well you do it, It's and Rodriguez is known for being very hands-on with his effects, so I appreciate the frugal nature of it.
Yeah, and I mean,
fair enough.
It stands to reason, though. I mean, just like briefly, I mean, this film was a budget of $10.5 million.
Well, how much was the budget for Planet Terror?
I don't know. Hold on.
Wait, really? It's that? Wow, that's a lot higher than I was expecting. $23 million. Okay, so I guess that makes sense.
So he's working with half the budget, so he has to,
Doesn't mean you can't get creative. That's my argument.
$10.5 million budget, but the box office was $44.1 million.
Ooh, it was a big success.
So this was like a massive success.
Yeah, the sequel made next to no money, unfortunately.
I've seen the sequel. I want to now.
I haven't seen it. I heard it's a lot worse, though. Like, even for people
I don't
really
expect much from it, but I'll watch it just for the heck of it. Like, I had fun with it. I got pretty much what I was expecting from it. I don't expect the sequel to live up to that, but whatever, I'll check it out.
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, it's just, it's a fun movie. The second one has Mel Gibson and Lady Gaga and, like,
Amber Heard.
Yeah.
There you go. It's already aged well.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyways. There are parts of the movie I do enjoy. Like, I don't want to seem like I ripping on it too much. Like, there's some stuff to it that definitely feels self-aware, like Steven Seagal just happening to have his wife at the right moment in the opening scene is like, okay, that definitely felt self-aware. I'll give you that one. That was pretty funny. The soundtrack slaps. Like, I really wasn't expecting the soundtrack to be as catchy and entertaining as it was, and added so much energy to all the action in the movie. And Danny Trejo and the main bad guy with the beard, he was hysterical. I'm like, finally, somebody who's enjoying their role and looks like he wants to be there. Like, I love the main bad guy in this because he's just super serious and edgy about everything. That his line deliveries just kept making me laugh. But the rest of the cast is either like barely in the movie or just didn't look like they wanted to be there, which was such a shame. Like, if it looked like they just had more fun to me anyways, maybe they had a lot of fun. I don't know if their phone number to find out. But To me, that it was like that. But like, there's entertaining moments of the film for sure, but also weird. It's only an hour 45 minutes, but it felt like it was too long for me. Like, this film easily could have been an hour 20, easily an hour 20. And I mentioned before how The Good and Bad, the Ugly felt like it dragged less than Machete, despite being an hour and 15 minutes longer.
Well, I mean, this is one of those that, I mean, Devin talked about this with, like, Bone Tomahawk. It's like, it's a movie that it's right on the 10, what you're going to expect. And as far as going into this and, wanting a cheesy, gory, dumb comedy, like dark comedy.
It wasn't enough of that,
man,
was my problem.
I feel like it delivered enough for me.
Fair enough.
But, that's just, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I liked it. So.
Bruh.
Bruh.
But you're wrong. Final verdicts for Machete. He don't text.
He improvised.
Yep.
10-10 Machete.
Is that ironic or actual? 10 out of 10.
Yes. It is.
Just yes. Just yes.
So I'm gonna be like, yes.
Yes to both. Acceptable, Devin.
It's exactly what I expected. I had a fun time. I probably won't rewatch it a whole lot, but if I want to see just another product of the whole Grindhouse like range of movies, and I just want a fun, gory, good time that's kind of passable, I don't have to think too much about it, I'll throw this on. It's a solid 6.9 for me.
Nice. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, but I really couldn't with this movie. I don't know if it was entirely focused on what it wanted to do. Like, if it wanted to be like a Black Dynamite, poke and make fun of this, / be a loving homage to this genre, or just like a failed attempt at just being preachy or trying to force a message into a cheesy action film, which I think other films do way better. The next one, for example. But a lot of it was really boring for me. It's kind of terribly paced. A lot of the actors looked like they didn't want to be there. The look of the film was very dull for me. Yes, they probably did run out of money, but they could have found hilarious ways to make up for that. But
what is your rating?
Okay, jeez, I'm giving my final thoughts here. 5 out of 10.
We want a number, not a rent.
5 out of 10. Jeez, I don't rant that much, do I?
Oh my god! Just finally, this is where
I'm giving my final thoughts on it. What do you want from me?
This is worse than listening to Devin talk about when I went to the Stanley Kubrick.
Well, I'm not jerking myself off, though, is the difference.
I'm just saying what I did.
I'm fucking with you, man. I'm fucking with you.
I know you are.
I appreciate it.
Yes. Did you know I met Pam Grier?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hey, good segue.
There you go. She's not in this next movie, but...
No, Django Unchained.
Django!
Django Unchained from 2012. It is a Western action blaxploitation film from director Quentin Tarantino. It is a quasi kind of remake spiritual successor to Django from 1966 by Sergio Corbucci, which is kind of referenced in this film a little bit, and we'll get to that later. It tells the story of Jamie Foxx, who is a freed slave by the name of Django, freed by Dr. Christoph Waltz, played by...
Christoph Waltz.
Christoph
Waltz, played by Christoph Waltz. Wow.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of humor that I would expect. It's Christoph Waltz playing Dr. King Schulz, who is a German dentist turned bounty hunter, and through the course of the movie, they have to free Django's wife from a villainous slave owner who runs an illegal slave fighting battle gladiator fight club. I guess it's, I don't know,
I don't
probably
think so.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, and I think that probably adds to how horrific it is. Um, yeah, it's black exploitation, grimy, lots of blood. This is my second time watching it, and it has aged spectacularly. I even updated my ranking of all Quentin Tarantino's films, and I think this is definitely in the top 5. I would actually put it right in the top 5, like as number 5.
Wow.
This is, yeah, I think either this one or Inglorious Bastards, as 4 and 5, interchangeably. I need to see Bastards again, but man, this was a great film. I loved it. The soundtrack is amazing. The gore is spectacular. The humor, the dialogue, it's witty, it's well written. The zoom in and the cinematography, it is a beautiful homage to these kinds of films, and I had a blast.
Oh,
That was it. I'm sorry.
am I just,
all I had.
am I just, all right, yeah, no worries, man, no worries.
Sorry, did I thought my signal dropped there for a second, but
oh
no,
we're good.
Was all, that was just
it
all
was
I
just
had.
awkward silence.
Okay, no.
I was waiting on you guys.
Well, I do
thank
want to chime in here because I have a bit of a funny story. This is not my first time or second time or third or fourth time seeing this film. This is probably the Tarantino film that I've rewatched the most.
Me too.
I just found it to have the most rewatch value. It's just a very tight knit, dramatic, comedic, horrific film that really tackles a difficult topic. It's slavery, but it does it in such a fun way that it's easy to admire. But people were very critical of it when it came out. People were either loving it or ashamed to say that they were loving it, or they were very critical of it. They were comparing it to 12 Years a Slave. I remember when I was going to go out to see this, I was going to go out and see it with my uncle because he likes action movies. But I think he said he just saw 12 Years a Slave, so he didn't want to see another slavery movie because it's a pretty heavy topic. But I eventually convinced him. And when we went to the theater, we were parked next to this car. And I remember being in the theater and seeing this black couple there, and they were having a fun time for most of the film. But coincidentally, they happened to be parked right next to us after, and I just opened up the line like that movie was off the chain, eh? Just a cheesy joke, but we ended up talking for like 5 minutes about it, and how even though it was a very difficult topic for them, they were having a good time about it, which kind of validated my enjoyment of it because I wasn't sure if I was allowed to enjoy some of the stuff in this film, but it was really validating.
Yeah.
It was kind of validating to hear from them because,
yeah. Well, he even talked about that. Growing up as a kid, he watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and he wanted to give the kind of Clint Eastwood character. He wanted to give that sort of archetype for young, black boys, I guess, that they could grow up, and that would be their coming of age, like Western.
This was such an engrossing movie when I saw it. And what's funny is I saw Inglourious Bastards just a week before seeing this movie. So it's such a whiplash to see Christoph Waltz's character go from the most evil on-screen Nazis since Ralph Fiennes and Schindler's List to being this really virtuistic character. And I just love the story of how Quentin Tarantino found Christoph Waltz and how they kind of saved each other's careers at that point, because Tarantino was at the end of his rope saying, if I can't find a Hans Lada for Inglourious Bastards, and I'm just going to give up the movie and just release a screenplay as is. And Christoph Waltz was kind of at the end of his rope in his career. He was considering giving up acting, and they just found each other. And because of that film and this film, Christoph Waltz gained 2 consecutive Oscars, both for Best Supporting Role, just for being in those 2 movies.
Insane.
Which is an incredible story.
Fantastic film. I think everybody is giving some just career best performances. I'm not going to be the guy to. I hate to be this guy, but did you know Leonardo DiCaprio broke his hand with the
Yes,
glass?
and they kept the take.
Kept acting, and actually to hear Jamie Foxx tell it, it was like he never stopped, and so all of the reactions are basically genuine.
100% genuine.
That was the most intense scene in the film at that point.
Well, and it actually rubbing the blood on Kerry Washington's face was
real.
improvised.
Yep.
I think
her response got like, ugh.
Well, I think at that point he really did smash his hand and he really did bleed, but he kept acting. But once they finished that take of it, what they did is they cleaned him up. I think they stitched him up. Then they put fake blood on his hand, and then he improvised the moment, so he wasn't actually rubbing his actual blood on her face.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that.
I think he improvised, he injured himself, but then they worked with it, and he created that moment from that. So it was like a,
Yeah. Well, the funniest thing is that, you know, for DiCaprio to get this invested in the role, it was kind of funny to me because I looked up an interview that Samuel L. Jackson had given. And he said that, you know, DiCaprio was really not sure of this part, how rough it was and how just vile the character he was playing was. And, you know, we're talking about kind of like what we talked about with Clint Eastwood, you know, like not being sure of what you're doing. And so DiCaprio just kind of went off to the side and he was like, I don't know if I want to do this. This is going to hurt my career. Like, I don't even feel comfortable, like, saying these awful things. And the story was that Samuel L. Jackson came up to him, put his hand on his back, and said, come on, man, this is just another Tuesday.
Yeah, motherfucker, this is just another Tuesday for us.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that backstory. There's this YouTuber named FD Singer, and he talked about this in one video of his that I thought was really good. And he was saying how Jamie Foxx was trying to be more supportive of him, saying, you know, it's all right, it's just part of the character, and if you act like the ultimate antagonist, then it just makes the whole thing work. And then Samuel L. Jackson's, it's just buck up. It's another Tuesday for us, and and then there's another clip that he shows of Samuel L. Jackson and almost antagonizing the white reviewer, trying to egg him on to say the N-word if he felt like saying it.
Yeah. Well, and it's also funny. I mean, I know a guy who knows some people. Actually, the producer on my short film. He knows some of the guys that worked on Django, like were a part of the crew. Yeah. And so I have heard that there were basically 6 steady cams on set at all times to capture the, like, big, wide, like, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, kind of like riding into town, horse riding scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
And so it really talks about the commitment to this film. I think that this film is a lot more progressive than maybe people would like to give it credit for.
Oh, absolutely.
I know that. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, because if you think about it, all of the people who are as incredibly vile and racist as they are in this film, none of them are portrayed in a positive light.
No, it's not supporting it. It's making fun of them. It's I mentioned something similar in Jojo Rabbit, and The Great Dictator is when you make fun of these awful historical figures, you're not giving them more power. You're taking away the power from them. So when we see the KKK members going like, did anybody have an extra bag? No, nobody brought an extra bag. Yeah. I'm just asking.
They're all so ignorant. Like, I loved. There was one moment, and I had forgotten this the first time that I watched it. And I just love this, where Christoph Waltz is talking to DiCaprio, and he's like, "What do you think?" And I forget the.
It's like, what do you think? Do you know who I think you are? What you think I am? No, I don't. I think you are a bad loser, and I think you are an abysmal winner. Like, just that immediate comeback.
No,
that's different. Okay, sorry.
this was the moment where they're talking about the writer of the Three Musketeers.
Oh yeah,
And I don't
Alexandre Dumas. It's like self-taught Frenchie.
Alexander Dumas.
Alexandre Dumas was
and
black.
I didn't even know this.
He's
but
half
they're
black.
like-
It's not entirely
Yeah, but-
true. He's half black. He's not entirely black. But
Well,
still.
okay, but still, it was so funny because he's like, oh, what? He's like a soft-hearted Frenchie. It's like,
yeah, he built himself on this offer, and Chris was basically pointing out, you're a hypocrite. You know, you're not this. You don't know anything about literature. You're not as smart as you think you are. You know, the man you've been.
You don't speak French.
They even talk about, like, don't try to speak French to him. It embarrasses him.
Exactly.
It embarrasses him because it's like he's calling him. If he says he's a self-proclaimed Francophile, but he doesn't speak French. He names a slave of his after D'Artagnan, who's the main character in The Three Musketeers, and that was a question Christoph Waltz or King Schultz's character brought up. Is I wonder what Alexander Dumas would have thought of that today. And he says, "Come again." Like he didn't know who he was talking about, and he says the author of The Three Musketeers. He says, "Oh, of course." Like he's putting on the facade that he knows. But
well, and so I did mention the original Django. This is based on a film in 1966, which was another spaghetti western, and that film.
I remember I did see it not long after seeing this because it got me interested.
Well,
I wonder,
the original star of the 1966 Django
He's
is
in this movie.
This film.
He says, "What is your name, Django? Can you spell that for me? Dgango. The D is silent. I know." Like, how's it feel that the original actor of Django just goes like, "I know you're Django" to you? Like, that's got to be like the coolest pat in the back ever.
Well, and it's kind of funny because he's asking him how to spell it. Like, I know how to spell it. Do you know?
How to spell? I'm testing you here.
Yeah, right.
It's like, all right, you got this.
That little touch. Yeah, and it's those little touches of just really care and passion that were put into this film.
Yeah, like this is one of the most quotable movies out there, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Like, I quote this. Sorry, go on.
I like the way Franco Nero is credited in the beginning, where he says, "with the friendly participation of Franco Nero," because I think he was reluctant to even go anywhere near this at first. So
I think a lot of people were, yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, reading the script and all the things, like he's asking Samuel Jackson to play pretty much a not a black slaver, but like a house N-word, and how that would be like the most despicable kind of character. But he totally owns into the role, and he does a good job of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to be like absolutely hysterical too. Like, this whole movie is so tongue-in-cheek. It's like you said with Machete, but I think this film pulls off the tone much better, and I feel like it takes itself even less seriously. When he says, it's like, "Oh, why are you letting him stay in the big house? Your father's just rolling in his grave, just casually mumbling off on his own."
Yeah,
like, it's terrible, but it's just hilarious at the same time. In the big house. Oh no. It's like, thank you, Steven. You're welcome, Candy. It's just so much quotable stuff in this movie. It's like, "You have to promise not to scream, alright?" And she just passes out. It's like, "You silver tongue dog, you."
Devil.
Yeah.
Sorry, devil. I said dog, but
it's an incredible movie to misquote as well.
Yeah. You know what? Fair enough. But I apologize profusely for messing up that quote.
You're paraphrasing it, Tad, but you get the general gist.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
As he says.
And I do need to be hitting the old dusty trail.
I see. What would you give Django Unchained out of 10?
What would I give it? You know what? I'm going to keep my scores easy to remember this week.
Ooh.
Giving it a 10 out of 10.
God damn. Well, have a great night, Steven. Thank you for the discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. Man, I love all of these films. They're very near and dear to me. They're all kind of in the Western genre, which I myself grew up with and was really my introduction to film, even before I saw like Reservoir Dogs, and I was like, oh, I could make movies. Like, even before
it's
then,
easy.
Yeah, like John Wayne and all of those movies were super inspiring and influential. So, man, this has been an absolute dream, and just to discuss these movies and
I appreciate
talk
your
about how
passion,
great they
Steven.
are. Yeah,
it's encouraging. It's encouraging. It makes you feel confident that movies can be. Actually, this is my thing. I'll just say this quick. I remember 2009. I can't believe that was the year. I saw the movie Year One in theaters with Michael Cera and Jack Black, and I thought, oh, are movies bad now? Like I thought movies just in general were just going to be bad forever now, and that was undone when I saw Django. I'm like, okay, movies are good again.
Yeah.
Perfect contrast.
And but Steven, I'll let you know what we're doing next week.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you gentlemen again. And now I must tip my hat.
From one legend to another. Take care.
From one. There's only two kinds of people in this world.
Oh, God. Get out of here.
Those who leave the podcast early.
Or leave the podcast.
We shall say Auf Wiedersehen. We see each other again.
But since I never want to see you again, to you, sir, I simply say goodbye.
Yes. Not to you, Stephen. We're not talking about your back on this podcast.
Yeah, please come back.
Yes, please do.
Oh, he's gone.
Yeah, I heard him go, but yeah, it is such a rewatchable film, and that's factors high for me in terms of the quality. It's a solid film. I mean, I don't know if I'd give it exactly a 10. Fuck it, no, I'd give it a 10. It's a solid movie.
Damn.
It's a solid movie. I think the fact that it leans into these themes and just fully embraces them, and I don't want to sound like a Tarantino fanboy, and because I get all the criticisms against him, but this film is just overall a good time, and I think the moments that are super intense are well earned. I remember seeing in the theater the whole scene of him demonstrating with the skull. This is the thing that really caught me and really gave this thing depth, is the fact that his whole ideology or his whole justification for upholding slavery, this is Calvin Candy's character in this, is based in phrenology, which was a observed science at the time that many years later has been debunked and is now considered a pseudoscience that generally says that the shape and sizes of certain elements of the skull have something to do with the intelligence of the person contained in it, and that 3 dimples in the back of the skull means that a black person is more leaning towards civility and servitude, where a more genius white person, in his words, would be more creative. The fact that all that is based in a false science, I think, really speaks to the whole message of this film and the whole, and the whole take of his character. The fact that he's so convicted based on a false science. Exactly. I thought that was really compelling. A really compelling point for his character. That's what really sold him as a good villain. And the fact that he fully embraces that role and commits to it. The fact that all these people commit to these roles just fulfills them as these perfect archetypes. And it makes it all the more satisfying when he blows the whole place up at the end. And speaking of that explosion at the end, I noticed this in the theater, and I can't believe how perfectly it ended up. But one piece of debris ends up exactly between his feet on the ground.
And that was not scripted.
Him.
Yeah, I remember that.
And just the placement, it was just perfect. I was absolutely perfect, and I was sure that someone had thrown that into frame. But looking at it again, it does come from the central explosion. It's phenomenal.
It's he must have been just high-fiving himself when he got that take. Yeah, I don't think I quite loved it as much as you guys, but it's one of Tarantino's best. I've seen it so many times. I quote this movie with my brother all the time. We joke about it constantly. I do think it outstays its welcome. I do think some of the music choices, something about pop music in older movies is really dumb to me. And some of the character decisions were, I don't buy that Schultz would shoot him at the end despite finding him a detestable person. But, everything else, just from the dialogue to the characters to the humor, it's gorgeous. The production design is great. This was the last production design by Tarantino's production designer before she passed away, and he got a new one for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Hateful Eight.
What was it? I knew about his editor. I guess Sally Menke.
I think
this was the first film of. This was the first film of his that didn't have Sally Menke as the editor, I believe. Yeah. She passed away, and they've been collaborating ever since Reservoir Dogs. So.
Yeah. Oh. Was it the production design or the set design? I think it was the set designer who passed away after this film, or was it Sharon? No, it's Leslie Pope. Yeah, Leslie Pope. I think she passed away after this movie, but she did a magnificent job working on this. No, wait, no, she died she died in 2020. I have to watch the special features again to know for sure. I am not very well researched tonight. I'm sorry. Anyways, this film gets a grade out of 10.
I'm going based off of memory and vibes. So facts will be verifiable or unverifiable. Yeah, I probably should have done my research, but I watched the film itself, and it literally just ended before I came onto the podcast, so I didn't get any time to further research it. But I remember doing a extensive amount of research around the time it came out. Yeah, I just found it a very engaging, enthralling film that talks about serious topics, but makes it in a presentable, poppy way. Maybe it doesn't satisfy a lot of people on those fronts. Other films are probably better to talk about it, but at least this is maybe an entry point into that, and it gives us a way to reflect back on these, times and what was acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And it might seem unbelievable these days, but unfortunately, these problems are still prevalent. And I think a movie like this with the characters that commit, are good archetypes to study and examine, perhaps. Like at one point, Django was having to play a black slaver, and that's like the lowest of the low. And that was a line that Christoph said that and you need to give me your black slaver, like fully commit to it. And he was actually almost going overboard past the point where King Schultz was comfortable, and it was to try to just sell the role. Like you almost have to push yourself all the way through it to get to the other side and find that moral resolution. Like you really have to fully integrate the shadow
and most of all,
I'm getting into psychological stuff
here. No, that's all right. And most of all, it handles it in a film that's fun and comedic and isn't afraid to not take itself very seriously, which is very rare for a lot of movies that try to tackle political themes. So I think for that reason alone, it's just incredibly refreshing. It's not the most subtle in its messaging, but the way it's delivering the messaging is something we don't get enough of anymore. That's it for Salford Justice, everybody. Sorry we couldn't talk about Django for longer, but maybe we'll throw in a extended discussion another time on it. I'd love to talk about it some more. Special thanks to you, Steven, if you're listening right now. You're great as always. Thank you, Devin, again, and thank you for taking over the episode beforehand. Next episode, I believe, is your recommendation.
Yes,
What is the plan?
I've been muddling around this idea for a while, and I think I'm just going to do it. It had been in the polls, but I've had the idea long enough that I just want to use my moderator powers to just bring it up to the list now that this is my choice. School's back in season, and so I kind of want to look at Pumped Up Kicks.
Pumped Up Kicks? That's a movie?
No, it's the trilogy.
What does it entail?
And school shooters.
Oh, good.
It's gonna be a very serious one. I don't want to make light of it too much, but Pumped Up Kiss is the name of it. I believe the films are Elephant, Polytechnique from Denis Villeneuve, and one that Steven suggested that will be very interesting to look at, because I'm pretty sure that we'll have some very fun arguments around it. Run, Hide, Fight.
Oh, you know what? I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a fun discussion.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's been in the polls for a while, and it's always come close. And I just feel the urge to talk about it because I think there's some very serious stuff to look at. We don't get too many shootings up here in Canada, unfortunately, although there have been some that crop up. We touched on this topic a little bit when we looked at Bowling for Columbine, which was the real standout film from the Bowling trilogy with Kingpin and what was the other?
I mean, The Big Lebowski.
The Big Lebowski, Kingpin. That was a fun episode. I enjoyed it.
That was a really fun episode. Yeah, Kingpin wasn't great. We still have a fun discussion.
Kingpin wasn't a great movie, but I remembered as a kid, it was fun to look at that again because the scenes that were funny are still funny, and I realized why I forgot the rest of it because it is genuinely bad. But
by the way, I know I said talking about a school shooter episode would be fun. Please don't take that out of context, and make sure to stay tuned. Is it Tuesday yet? Have a great night, guys.
Yes. Have a good night, y'all.
Take care.
Thanks for listening.